It started on a Friday night, the kind where the house already felt dangerous before anyone said a word. I came home holding hands with Ethan, the one person who made me believe life didn't have to be something I survived through. We'd been dating 6 months. He wasn't rich, wasn't flashy, but he was kind, and that was enough for me. My mom spotted us from the porch. Her face tightened like she'd just seen a stain on her favorite rug. "Who's that?" she demanded before we even reached the door. "My boyfriend," I said, voice soft but steady. "His name's Ethan. Please subscribe to our channel and tell you send comments from where are you watching this video." Dad stepped out behind her, his beer bottle still in hand. He looked Ethan up and down the way people look at bad weather. "Boyfriend?" he repeated. "This one doesn't look like he can even pay for his own shoes." Ethan tried to smile, offering his hand. "Nice to meet you, sir." Dad didn't shake it. He laughed. Low, mean. "You dating him because you ran out of options or because you want to embarrass me?" "Dad," I whispered. "Please." But he wasn't listening. He never did. He stepped closer, his voice growing colder. "You think bringing trash into my house makes you grown? You think I'll let my daughter date some mechanic dropout?" "He's not a dropout," I said, my throat tightening. "He's working and saving for trade school." That was the wrong thing to say. Mom crossed her arms, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. "So now we're lowering our standards for love too? You really take after your father, falling for failures." Ethan's face went pale. "Ma'am, with respect, don't," I whispered, but it was too late. Dad grabbed Ethan's collar. "You think you're a man? Coming here like you belong?" "Dad, stop!" I screamed, stepping between them. But Mom shoved me aside, shouting, "Let your father handle it!" Ethan's voice cracked. "Sir, I didn't mean any disrespect." Dad's fist came down before he could finish. The sound of skin meeting skin was louder than I remembered from childhood. Ethan stumbled back, nose bleeding. I lunged toward him, but Mom grabbed my arm. "You made your bed, now lie in it." "Please," I begged. "Stop!" But Dad dragged Ethan out the front door, still yelling. I ran after them barefoot into the yard, the gravel cutting my feet. "Dad, please!" He threw Ethan onto the driveway. "Get out of my sight before I break something you need." Ethan struggled to his feet, eyes wide with disbelief and hurt. He looked at me, not angry, not scared, just broken. "I'll call you later," he whispered, then stumbled down the road, wiping blood from his face. When I turned to my father, my hands were shaking. "You're a monster!" he smirked, chest heaving. "You're just like him, useless." The word hit harder than his hand ever could. I barely saw his arm swing before the side of my face exploded with pain. The world went white, then black, then blurry. I tasted blood. I heard Mom's voice like an echo underwater. "That's what happens when you bring shame into this house." When I woke up, I was on the living room floor. The lamp had been knocked over and my cheek had already begun to swell. Mom sat on the couch scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. Dad was outside smoking. I stood up slowly, hand pressed to my face. "Where's Ethan?" "Gone," Mom said without looking up. "And good riddance. Maybe now you'll learn your place." "My place?" I whispered. She looked up, smirking. "You think you can do better than what we give you? You'll end up just like him, pathetic, broke, and bleeding." I walked past her without answering, climbed the stairs, and locked my door. My reflection in the mirror made me freeze. My lip was split, my cheek purple, my eye half shut. I didn't cry. Not that night. I just sat on the floor, back against the door, and stared at the ceiling until morning. Ethan texted me once, "Are you okay?" "I'm sorry I left." I didn't know what to do. I didn't answer, because what could I say? That I wasn't okay? That I'd known this would happen the moment I introduced him? That every part of me still wanted to believe my parents could be human, and now I knew they never would be? The next morning, Dad acted like nothing had happened. "You're not leaving this house until you learn respect," he said over breakfast. "You think you can run off with losers? Not under my roof." Mom poured herself coffee. "You should be grateful he cares enough to correct you." Correct me? I whispered. He hit me. She looked at me calmly, then stopped giving him reasons to. Something inside me went quiet then, not broken, just still. Like the part of me that used to beg for love had finally died. I packed that silence away, hid it under my bruises, and waited for the right time. Because if there's one thing I learned from living in that house, it's that control doesn't last forever. And when it breaks, it's loud. I looked in the mirror one more time that night, tracing the bruise along my cheekbone, and whispered to my reflection, "You're not done yet." Because I wasn't. I was just getting started. When I woke up the next morning, my face ached every time I breathed. The swelling had gone down just enough that I could open my eye. I went downstairs to find Mom humming in the kitchen, frying eggs like nothing happened. The air smelled like oil and denial. Dad sat at the table, sipping coffee, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up when he said, "You're not seeing that boy again." I stood there for a moment, the silence growing heavy. "You think you can decide that for me?" He laughed. "You think you have a choice?" Mom turned from the stove. "You embarrassed us bringing that dirty mechanic here. Everyone in this town knows who we are. Do you want people to think we raised a beggar?" My throat burned. "You raised a daughter who wanted to be loved." Her spatula slammed against the pan. "You raised yourself wrong." I left the room before the tears could fall. The hallway mirror caught my reflection. The bruise across my face was now yellowing at the edges. I pressed my fingertips to it and whispered, "This is the last time." They didn't know I'd already started planning. That afternoon, while Dad was working at the shop and Mom was at her friend's house gossiping, I opened my laptop. Ethan had texted again. "Please talk to me. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." I called him. The moment he answered, his voice cracked. "Are you okay?" "No," I said quietly, "but I will be." He came by late that night, parked down the road so they wouldn't see his car. When he saw my face, his hands trembled. "They did this to you again, didn't they?" I nodded, barely breathing. "And they think they got away with it." He stepped closer. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to let them show the world who they really are," I said, "and I'm not going to lift a finger." Ethan frowned. "You're not thinking about—" "No," I interrupted. "No police, no fight. I'm done being the punching bag. It's time they see what happens when the person they control finally stops playing along." Over the next few weeks, I stayed silent. I acted obedient, quiet, the perfect daughter again. Dad thought he'd broken me. He even started calling me sweetheart again, like the word could glue me back together. But I was already gone. I got a new job, one he didn't know about, managing a garage downtown, the same place Ethan worked. Every paycheck I saved in an account under my own name. No joint access, no family emergencies. Just mine. At home, Mom bragged to her friends about how our daughter finally learned discipline. Dad nodded, pleased with himself, saying, "Sometimes they need to be reminded who's in charge." I smiled, poured their coffee, and said nothing. Then, one evening, I overheard Dad on the phone in the garage. "Yeah, the house will sell quick. Market's up. Once it's gone, we'll move out of this town. The girl can figure herself out." That was it. The house. The place where every bruise, every scream, every insult was born. And they were going to sell it like nothing ever happened. That night, I went to the attic. Dust and memories stuck to my skin. I found the old camcorder Dad used to record family videos when I was little. Birthdays, barbecues, everything before the cruelty got worse. It still worked. I scrolled through the tapes. There I was, at 7, smiling shyly. At 10, helping Mom in the kitchen while she scolded me for burning cookies. At 16, crying after. Dad broke my phone for talking too much to boys. Then, at 19, footage I didn't know existed. Dad screaming at me for disrespect. Mom laughing in the background, my hand on my cheek, my voice saying, "Please, stop." I froze. He must have recorded it out of spite. But now, it was proof. Not for the world. For them. I copied it to a flash drive, slipped it into an envelope, and left it on their bed with a note that said only one sentence. "This is who you are." The next morning, I left the house before sunrise. I moved in with Ethan, got a second job, and started saving faster. I didn't call them, didn't text, didn't explain. 3 weeks later, I got a message from Mom. "How dare you invade our privacy like that? Your father is furious. You've destroyed this family." I didn't reply, because that family had been destroyed a long time ago. They just hadn't noticed until someone handed them the mirror. Ethan touched my hand. "You think they'll ever change?" I shook my head. "No, but I did." And for the first time, that felt like enough. Still, I knew it wasn't over. Not yet, because the real revenge, the one that would make them feel every ounce of the pain they caused, hadn't even begun. 3 months passed before I heard from them again. By then, I'd moved into a small apartment with Ethan. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe. No shouting through the walls, no footsteps that made my body flinch. I could finally sleep without keeping one eye open. But one evening, as I was closing the shop, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. I almost deleted the message before reading it, but something made me pause. "Your father's hurt. Fell at work. He's asking for you." I stared at the screen for a long time. The old me, the one they'd broken, would have dropped everything and run. But that girl didn't exist anymore. Still, Ethan looked at me with concern. "You sure you don't want to go?" "I'll go," I said, "but not for him. For me." When I pulled into their driveway, the house looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling, the porch light flickered, and the place felt empty. Mom opened the door, her face pale, her eyes swollen like she hadn't slept. "Your father's in the living room," she whispered. He was lying on the couch, leg in a cast, a bruise running down his temple. The man who once filled every room with noise suddenly looked weak, small. He saw me and tried to smirk. "Took you long enough." I said nothing, just stood there. Mom wrung her hands. "He's been in pain for days. The bills are piling up, the shop's losing customers. Maybe if you could help out." There it was, the real reason she called. Not concern, not guilt, need. I almost laughed. "You only remember I exist when you're falling apart." Mom's lip quivered. "Don't talk like that. We're still family." "Family?" I said softly. "Family doesn't drag the person you love into the street. Family doesn't smash your face and call you useless." Dad groaned, eyes darting away. "You're still holding on to that? I was teaching you a lesson." "No," I said. "You were showing me exactly what kind of person I'd never become." He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "You told me once I'd end up like Ethan. Poor, pathetic, a waste. Look around, Dad. You're living the life you built." Mom started crying quietly, but I didn't feel sorry anymore. I felt free. I stepped closer to the doorway, looking around at the walls that had witnessed everything, every slap, every insult, every bruise I'd hidden. "Do you remember what you said the night you hit me?" Dad frowned. "I said a lot of things." "You said he's just like you, useless." I met his eyes. "Turns out, you were right about one thing. He was like you once, until he chose to stop letting pain define him. And I did too." I placed an envelope on the table. Mom reached for it, confused. "What's this?" "The deed," I said. "You were going to sell this house. Now it's in your name alone. You can keep it, or sell it, or burn it. But you'll never see me again." Her hands shook. "Why would you?" "Because I don't need revenge that hurts. I need one that heals." I turned to leave. Dad shouted after me, "You think you're better than us now?" I stopped in the doorway. "No, Dad, I just finally stopped being yours." Outside, the air smelled like rain. Ethan was waiting in the car. When I got in, he asked quietly, "You done?" I looked back at the house one last time, that collapsing shrine of fear and ego, and whispered, "Yeah, I'm done." As we drove away, the first drops of rain hit the windshield. It felt like the world washing something off me that had clung too long. Later that night, lying beside Ethan, I realized revenge wasn't about seeing them suffer. It was about watching them live with what they'd done, knowing I'd built something beautiful out of everything they tried to destroy. And that was the sweetest silence I'd ever known. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.